Guess what just happened? Ottawa just made a move that instantly caught Washington's attention. Canada's industry minister, Mélanie Joly, publicly said that Canada is being shortchanged in the multi-billion-dollar F-35 program. But this isn't just another routine complaint from a NATO ally. This is a signal that Canada may be preparing to reverse one of the biggest defense decisions it has made in the last decade. While Lockheed Martin continues to insist that the F-35 contract is finalized and secure, Sweden's Saab is quietly placing an alternative on the table, one that's extremely hard for Ottawa to ignore. 10,000 high-tech jobs, a full fighter jet manufacturing plant built inside Canada, and a real chance for Ottawa to break free from a supply chain that is completely controlled by Washington. So the real question isn't whether Canada has the courage to walk away from the F-35. The real question is this: when industrial sovereignty collides with alliance pressure, which side will Ottawa choose? Last November, during a parliamentary hearing, Industry Minister Mélanie Joly made her frustration clear. She openly stated that Canada needs to get far more value out of the F-35 program, a deal Canada has supported for over 20 years as a founding partner. Public records show that Canada has invested hundreds of millions of dollars into F-35 development since the 1990s. In return, Canadian firms were promised access to the global supply chain, producing components and maintenance services for thousands of F-35s operating around the world. But what Canada expected and what Canada received are not the same thing. Defense analysts point out that the majority of contract value still flows straight to American companies. Canadian firms mostly receive smaller subcontracts, not enough to build true manufacturing independence or establish major research centers. Put simply, Canada pays heavily, while the technology stays in Texas and California. Joly didn't stop with criticism. She directly called for renegotiation. If Canada continues with the F-35, she said, economic benefits must come back home. Otherwise, in her own words, Canada needs to explore other options that deliver real value to Canadians. And that was the moment Saab stepped forward with an offer that completely changed the conversation. Saab, the Swedish aerospace company, proposed something very few fighter manufacturers would ever commit to: building a full Gripen E production line inside Canada. That includes creating 10,000 jobs across research, manufacturing, and long-term maintenance. This wasn't just marketing talk. According to public sources, Saab presented concrete plans for technology transfer, training Canadian engineers, and building a domestic supplier network. Everything, from airframes and avionics to engines, would be assembled and maintained by Canadian teams on Canadian soil. This approach isn't new for Saab. Sweden followed an industrial sovereignty strategy throughout the Cold War, refusing to rely on either the United States or the Soviet Union. The Gripen was designed from the ground up for independence. It can operate from highways, requires small support crews, and integrates components from multiple suppliers, instead of being locked into a single system. For Canada, this represents a rare opportunity. Instead of remaining a customer that buys finished aircraft from abroad, Ottawa could build a genuine aerospace defense industry. This goes far beyond job creation. It gives Canada ownership of technology, the freedom to upgrade systems independently, the ability to perform repairs domestically, and even the chance to export components to other Gripen operating countries. But Saab understands that industrial promises alone aren't enough. The Gripen E must also meet Canada's real defense needs. Canada isn't focused on launching overseas wars. Ottawa's primary priorities are Arctic sovereignty, vast airspace patrols, and constant readiness in some of the harshest conditions on Earth. And this is where the Gripen E excels. Public technical data shows the Gripen was designed specifically for extreme environments. Sweden optimized it for icy runways, deep sub-zero temperatures, and emergency operations from highways. For Canada, where Arctic bases face blizzards and temperatures below -40°C, this is a critical advantage, not a minor detail. The Gripen E also offers dramatically lower operating costs. Analysts estimate its cost per flight hour at roughly $8,000, compared to between $35,000 and $47,000 for the F-35. For a country with limited defense spending, this means more flight hours, better pilot training, and higher readiness levels across the fleet. Still, the F-35 has clear strengths. It's a fifth-generation stealth aircraft deeply integrated into NATO and NORAD systems. It can penetrate contested airspace, strike with precision, and share real-time battlefield data with allies. But experts raise a key question: does Canada truly need stealth aircraft to patrol the Arctic? Or does it need a reliable fleet that can launch at a moment's notice without draining the defense budget? This leads to an even bigger issue: Technology sovereignty. The F-35 is not just an aircraft. It's an ecosystem entirely controlled by the United States. Software updates, weapons integration, system repairs, and spare parts all require approval through Lockheed Martin and the Pentagon. Canada cannot independently modify radar systems, integrate third-party weapons, or repair certain components without U.S. authorization. In real-world terms, this creates vulnerability. If U.S.-Canada relations were ever strained over trade, climate policy, or Arctic disputes, Washington could delay parts, restrict maintenance, or withhold software updates. Analysts refer to this as hard technological dependence. Canada would own the aircraft, but not fully control them. The Gripen E operates under a very different philosophy. Saab allows customer nations to integrate their own weapons, sensors, and avionics from multiple suppliers. Brazil, for example, has developed its own communication systems and integrated domestic missiles into its Gripen fleet without needing Swedish approval. For Canada, this opens the door to independent innovation without being constrained by any single superpower's foreign policy. This is where political pressure intensifies. Washington has not ignored signs that Canada may reconsider the F-35. Defense observers report that Pentagon officials have repeatedly reminded Ottawa that the F-35 is more than an aircraft purchase. It's a strategic commitment to NATO, NORAD, and allied interoperability. Choosing the Gripen would mean operating a different platform from the US, the UK, and several NATO partners. In joint operations, coordination and data sharing could become more complex. But analysts argue these challenges are manageable. The Gripen E uses NATO communication standards and integrates into shared data networks. Sweden, neutral for most of the Cold War and only recently a NATO member, has already proven that Gripens can operate alongside F-35s and other Western fighters without major problems. So where does the real pressure come from? Not technology, politics. Washington views the F-35 as a tool of alliance control. Buying the aircraft means locking into the American military ecosystem. That dependence provides diplomatic leverage. If Canada breaks away, it sends a powerful signal to other allies. It's possible to say no to Washington and still maintain national security. But, Canada's strategy goes beyond just replacing the F-35. Ottawa is actually pursuing diversification. On October 30th, 2025, Canada and South Korea signed Ottawa's first security and defense cooperation agreement in the Indo-Pacific. This was not symbolic. It marked the start of a deep industrial partnership, including data sharing, energy cooperation, and defense technology transfer. South Korea has become one of the fastest-growing weapons manufacturers in the world. From K-2 Black Panther tanks to K-9 Thunder howitzers and advanced destroyers, Seoul has demonstrated it can produce high-quality weapons at lower costs than many Western suppliers. Canada sees an opportunity to learn from this model. Canada brings shipbuilding expertise, aerospace engineering, energy resources, and advanced mining technology. South Korea brings mass manufacturing and export experience. Together, they can build resilient supply chains. This strategy aligns closely with Prime Minister Mark Carney's vision. As a former central bank governor, Carney has repeatedly emphasized domestic manufacturing and supply chain independence. He argues Canada must stop exporting raw materials, only to buy finished products back at inflated prices. The rise of America First trade policies has made this approach urgent. Tariffs, export controls, and preferential treatment for United States firms have shown Canada the risks of over-reliance. The Saab proposal, the South Korea agreement, and Jolie's public stance all point in the same direction. Canada is moving towards self-sufficiency. That cooperation extends beyond defense into clean energy, nuclear research, digital infrastructure, and critical minerals. Canada holds vast reserves of uranium, lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements, all vital for batteries, semiconductors, and modern defense systems. South Korea's electronics and EV industries need stable supplies outside China. Analysts call this a near-perfect match. The Saab proposal, the South Korea agreement, and Jolie's public stance all point in the same direction. Canada is moving towards self-sufficiency. That cooperation extends beyond defense into clean energy, nuclear research, digital infrastructure, and critical minerals. Canada holds vast reserves of uranium, lithium, cobalt, and rare earth elements, all vital for batteries, semiconductors, and modern defense systems. South Korea's electronics and EV industries need stable supplies outside China. Analysts call this a near-perfect match. Everything now hinges on one decision. How far is Canada willing to go to assert industrial and economic sovereignty? The choice between the F-35 and the Gripen will provide the first answer. Canada stands at a historic crossroads. This decision is not about speed, stealth, or price alone. It's about what kind of country Canada wants to be. One that continues as a junior partner inside a United States-controlled system, or one that builds its own defense industry, diversifies partnerships, and treats technology sovereignty as seriously as territorial sovereignty. If Canada succeeds, the impact will extend far beyond its borders. Other nations will ask the same questions. Washington knows this. Because if Ottawa proves independence is possible, the balance between alliance and sovereignty could change forever. The final question isn't what Canada will choose. It's how the world will change once that choice is made.